Hey guys, it's Snack Food. Today we had the opportunity to talk with Mod Ayiza. This interview was recorded in February, but I have now just found the time to get it all done and ready for everyone to listen. Since this was recorded earlier this year, there is parts of a conversation about updates that were relevant during that time, but it's still a great conversation anyways. This video is by far the longest video I've ever done, but I did not want to cut out any piece of our conversation. Mod Ayiza has also kindly offered to be looking up the comments and answer any questions that you may want to know. Keep it civil and ask away. Sit back, relax, start AFKing, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. The first topic I want to get into today is, what is your RuneScape playing career? What do you do nowadays as a normal player?
All started in high school. I think I would have been, I don't know, 11, maybe 12. The very first time I ever saw RuneScape, my older brother was playing it on the PC back when it was RuneScape Classic. And he refused to tell me what the game was. We were very competitive when we were younger, and he didn't want me to be playing the same game as him. So I used to sneak into the room and try and catch glimpses of what was going on and try and figure out what the game was called. And eventually I thought he was playing a game called Runescape. And then after multiple searches on, I think it was Ask Jeeves at the time, in fact, I found RuneScape, and I knew instantly as soon as I loaded the website that it was the right game. So I jumped in, made my account, and then couldn't get past Tutorial Island because I was young and foolish and didn't know how to play games properly at that point. I didn't realize he had to click the chat boxes in like the top left to continue in progress. I just thought that was just like chat that was happening. So I stopped at that point, and then I came back and started playing RuneScape officially about 2 weeks before the beta for RuneScape 2 started. I think the oldest account that I still have access to is just under 16 years old. But I played throughout high school for about 3 or 4 years, maybe a little bit longer. I've got some PK videos from like 2007, which are interesting. And I found one video from 2006 on an old CD drive whilst I was cleaning out my wardrobe a couple of months ago. And it's got the hypercam in the top left-hand corner, and it is brilliant. So that was a nice little throwback. And yeah, back then I was basically just a PvPer. I hated anything other than PvP. If I had to skill, nah. If I had to do quests, nah. I did what I needed to have my account build where it was. Other than that, the only other place I would ever be was in Edgeville. I was also really lame. I played like this range tank build, 99 range, defense, HP, with Karasi as a spec weapon. I ended up stopped playing RuneScape when the Polypore staff was introduced, because it just completely ruined PvP for me, and made it really, really, really unfun. I dipped in a little bit here or there just to do a few things with some friends, do a bit of dungeoneering, and then ultimately didn't play again when the Evolution of Combat released until the release of Old School. And I first started playing Old School about 6 months, it must have been, I think. It's about 3 to 6 months after it first released. And the only way that I knew that it existed was by going on to what was Justin TV at the time. So like the very first iteration of Twitch. And I saw Boaty playing RuneScape on there. And I was like, wait a second, this does not look like RuneScape. This looks like what I used to play as a kid. So I went to the RuneScape website, and lo and behold, it was like, yeah, we've released 2007 version of RuneScape. I was like, heck yeah, I'm getting in on that. So I did, and I played for about 6 months, very much on and off. Like at this point, I'm working full time. I'm focusing really hard on my career and progression and such. So I don't have a huge amount of time for gaming, and I'm also juggling other games as well that I'm still playing, primarily like World of Warcraft. And but yeah, I played a couple of hours here or there a day, and then I didn't touch Old School after that for about a year. And then I just suddenly had an urge to start playing again. I don't even know why, but I said to myself that I was going to get Quest Cape as quick as possible, because I never did quests before. I think I was about like 1,200 total or something like that. So not too unrealistic. Yeah, I got my Quest Cape. that was really cool. I really enjoy quests now. They're like my favorite piece of content really in game. And then I kind of, again, just, played sporadically pretty much on and off as and when I had time. For me, RuneScape is one of those games where, other than the time where I forced myself to get 95 Slayer as quickly as possible, I've never wanted RuneScape or tried to have RuneScape as like a game that is considered like hardcore, super efficient main game thing for me. I don't like to sweat. I do like to sweat out on RuneScape, but typically RuneScape for me has always been a game of like escapism. It's a relaxation game for me. It's one that I go into it and play how I want to play because that's how I enjoy it. And, if sometimes I want to play efficiently, I'll play efficiently. Other times, I might just be in complete recliner mode, full screen, doing just random AFK stuff or just casual Slayer. Just been on and off. The only times that I wasn't on and off and I was like hardcoring it was when first Deadman came out. I sweated that so bad. Like end of week 1, I was on like 99 range with Ancients unlocked, and I was just going around killing people until I got killed by a person called Die YouTuber. And then I quit. So I lost everything. And then when I originally left Jagex back in 2018, I set myself the goal of getting 95 Slayer in just under 4 weeks before the release of, Kebos Lowlands, so that I could do the Alchemical Hydra. Yeah, I did some pretty sweaty days, and I had some help as well, because at the time I was full-time streaming, so I had some of my stream my viewers and some friends that were helping me out, people from the community, as well as some high-level players like teaching me the ropes in terms of efficient gameplay. So shout out to Killzone, thank you for that. That was the last time that I really went hardcore. And now pretty much it's back to how it was before. I log in when I feel like I want to relax and chill. I went pretty hardcore on Trailblazer when that league came out last year for the first 2 weeks, just because I'd just left my old job and had a bit of time before I started Jagex. So I thought it was a great opportunity to basically forget about having responsibilities and being an adult. And since then I've just set myself a goal of doing 1 corrupted gauntlet a day. Sometimes I'll get an itch to do a little bit more, and I'll push myself to do like 3 or 4 completions. But otherwise, I'm just trying to do at least 1 corrupted gauntlet completion every day, just to keep myself up to speed with playing and my click accuracy and whatnot. And that's actually really fun. I don't actually have a huge amount of time at the moment to play, unfortunately, anything, yet alone RuneScape. And I'm terrible at AFKing when it comes to like leaving RuneScape on the side whilst doing work. I always forget about it. There's just no chance. Like, even if I'm doing Nightmare Zone, the most AFK of AFK things, I still forget to potion. And then I've sat there and I'm just like, I'll forget to absorptions or whatnot, and I'll be dead. And I'm like, okay, it's just not happening.
Can you talk about how long you've been working for Jagex, and if comfortable with answering, why leave and come back to the company?
So I originally joined Jagex back in 2017 and was there for just over a year. I left in December of 2018 and then rejoined again November 2020, and I'm there until now and hopefully for the foreseeable future as well. So just over a year and a half or so in total. When I originally worked at Jagex, to be completely honest with you, I never thought it was ever going to happen. It was one of those kind of like, teenage dreams. When I was in high school, you talk to your friends on where you want to go to, where you're going to work when you're older. And I was like, I'm going to work at Jagex, and you're mostly joking about it. And essentially there was, eventually the opportunity did come along that I saw a position that was available. I live a pretty far distance away from Cambridge, where the offices are based. So back in 2017, when I was first looking at the role, it was a case of having to look at relocating. Essentially, the main reason as to why I left the original time round was just because of the fact that we were looking and going through the process of relocating permanently to, down Cambridge way. But a lot of things happened all at once back at home. Nothing too serious, but, it was just like my parents fell ill for a couple of weeks. Again, nothing serious, just more like, bedridden with flu and whatnot. But it kind of like put things into perspective as to, how far away we would be if we were making that move permanently. My brother also had a kid, so I suddenly became an uncle, and the draw to wanting to be closer to family was just kind of like too strong to ignore. At the time we were in rented accommodation, just outside of Cambridge to help with the commute. But we have a house that we bought about 3 years before I joined Jagex, that we didn't sell, that we're obviously looking to sell and decided not to. So we moved back from our rented accommodation to our house, and that meant that my commute was about 5 hours a day, or all in there and back. So it was pretty hefty, and I managed to see that through for about 3 months until it just became a bit too much. And at that point, my quality of work had just declined to the point where I wasn't happy with what I was doing anymore. There weren't really any issues internally with Jagex. It was more of just like I guess, I don't want to say pride kind of thing, but I knew that I could do a better job than I was doing, and that annoyed me. So I kind of made the decision to to kind of just accept that it was what it was at the time. Jagex weren't really set up for remote working back then. It was never something that had been done before, and they definitely weren't in a position technology-wise to allow it to work effectively enough that I would be happy doing that job remotely. So yeah, I decided to just take it on the chin and leave. Coming back was a really easy decision for me to make. I always said in the back of my head that if there was ever an opportunity that I could go back, that didn't require me having to move and me being able to do my job properly, then I would take it as soon as I could. And well, if there's been one good thing about the whole pandemic with COVID and whatnot, it's companies are way more suited to working remotely now, or having their employees work remotely, I should say. So it kind of just worked out really well for me in that sense. It's been the saving grace of this whole nightmare of a situation, really. And it's the main reason as to why I'm back now, is because I'm able to work in a more remote capacity than I was before. The team's also remote, so whilst it's a little bit different from being all together, yeah, it works way better than it did back in 2017-18 anyway, that's for sure.
As a senior community manager, what does your job entail? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, that's it. It's an interesting question, actually, because I think Jagex is probably the one place where community management is very different from anywhere else. And maybe I'm biased in saying that, and actually every community manager job is the same. But we're not a typical game studio with the way that we're so interactive with the community. As senior, essentially, how's best to summarize everything? We do a lot, pretty much, but a good lot. So for me personally, I'm focusing at the moment primarily on content and new content that's coming out, especially our kind of like larger updates or things that require a little bit more thought going into, for the purpose of things such as polling, community feedback, and that back and forth between the community, the devs, the studio, and such. So I spend a lot of time planning how we approach pitching content to the community, how the blogs that we put out will be kind of like designed, what kind of information will be inside of them, and then any kind of like supporting work that needs to go alongside that, whether it be a beta or maybe some social content or videos. Maybe we can get some content creators that will be able to help highlight or emphasize certain points of an update, for example. So yeah, a lot of work in terms of content. And when we're actually at the point of pitching out to the community, part of my job as senior is also to then look at the feedback that the players are giving to us, and then collating that feedback in a way that it can be interpreted by the development team, where they can have a look at that and then decide if there are things that have been suggested by the community that maybe need to be changed so that it's more in line with what the players are expecting as opposed to what the developers had initially designed. And that also then means that for a large part we also get involved, not just myself but the rest of the community team get involved in playtesting content. We're spending a lot of time reading comments and suggestions from players, getting the kind of general understanding of how players feel about content and what they're expecting from it. So we kind of go into playtests from a player's perspective rather than a Jagex perspective. And if I was your average player from wherever it may be, going into this, is this what I'm expecting? And we can help suggest changes and look at balancing things. We don't actually do any development or coding or actually make decisions. It's more of a suggestions that get put forward, and then the rest of the studio decides on which ones are the most important to act upon or most feasible. Because at the end of the day, there can be some suggestions that come through that just aren't possible to do, or maybe just completely don't fit with what the particular piece of content at the time is trying to achieve. A lot about content, outside of content, at the senior level as well. I'm also doing a lot of internal reporting, whether that be letting the rest of the studio and the leadership team and the executive team know about how successful an update has been from a community perspective. Not so much in terms of engagement and numbers. It's more around the sentiment, how players feel, how much feedback changes we had to make before content went live, reporting on things like poll results. And then we also look at other areas, which is helping out with content creators, working closely with them to make sure they're getting the support they need to be able to make the content they want to, just being there generally for advice and such, and helping when we actually do them look at tournaments. So from the community team, we're pretty heavily involved when it comes to doing events and such, whether it be hosting or arranging participants, doing the administration side of things for that. We do a lot, I guess is what I'm saying. Making sure that the players' voices are heard by the development team, and the information that gets sent to the development team is sent to them in a way that is understood enough to, I don't know how to best word this one.
So the way I understand, you want to try to get the community's feedback in a way to the development team that's best describes what the community wants.
Yeah, exactly. Because pretty much you can say, for example, let's take Reddit, for example. If we were to just go on Reddit on an average day, maybe not at the moment because we have the equipment rebalance work going through, which obviously has got a lot of community attention and comments and feedback being brought through. But if we were to take a general update, a lot of the comments that come through won't necessarily be suitable to send over to a development team. Not to say that what's been given by a player or someone from the community is invalid. It just could be that there's a lot of information in there that just isn't necessary to be sent over. So we'll look to kind of try and get an idea of, okay, what is this player trying to tell us, and how can we make sure that information gets across to the development team as easily as possible. So it's a case of, rather than having to spend half an hour trying to go through a large comment chain or trying to understand the bigger picture, we provide that for them. And then they can act upon that accordingly. And then we can use that information to go back to the players and then say, hey, thank you for saying that. This is what we decided to do based on what you said. What do you think? When it comes to putting out information, we are the ones that are putting the news posts out onto the website. Typically, we'll write the news posts, even if it's not to do with content updates. So that could be if we've got a statement to make about particular things that are going on in the studio, or maybe there are things that we're looking at in terms of our plans going forward and looking into the future. The words might not necessarily always be our own words, but in terms of putting those together and communicating that out, it comes through from us. We have supporting teams that help us, like an editorial team and such, and PR departments. But we'll be the ones that will be uploading it, and then obviously engaging with the players when it comes to social platforms such as Twitter, the old school Discord. We've got the subreddit, and also the official forums. So if you really wanted to go into it as well, standard community management side of things is managing the forums, making sure there's no crazy posts that are going through. We also have a very specific community management focused mailbox that players can send suggestions into. We're also responsible for sending out surveys and creating the surveys at the same time as well. But again, that kind of falls into the supporting content side of things.
So I want to ask an age-old classic question that you yourself probably asked when you were just starting out playing RuneScape. How does one become a player moderator?
You see, the only way you can become a player moderator is by typing a smiley face in the chat. No, for real. There's always been the kind of these old age myths of things that you have to do, or ways that you have to be, or things you have to say to be able to become a player moderator. But I'm sorry to ruin the excitement behind it all and the mystery, but it's actually driven by a system process. So essentially, it's handled by the player support team first of all. So I may end up just telling you this somewhat inaccurately, but I think it's around about there. But essentially, if your account has membership, if you have an authenticator and a bank pin, and you have 0 infractions against your account, so your ban pillar is completely clean, then you're eligible to be selected as a player moderator. And as and when it's determined that more player moderators are needed, the system will look at all of the accounts that are eligible. And there are some extra things that go on in the background, but because I don't know the technicalities of them, I won't say what they are, just in case. And then, it will basically select a short list that then gets reviewed after that manually, I believe. And invitations are sent out. There's no secret to it all apart from being a good player. Obviously, when it comes to the reviewing side of things, if you see people are reporting others more often and such, that may be taken into account. But it's one of the player supports teams, areas of expertise. So,
slip a note, says snack food, you know what I mean?
You get that nice silver crown. And then what are you going to do with it? Dance around the Grand Exchange?
Something like that, Tell people the same thing, put a smiley face in chat,
Yeah, exactly. It always does get me a good laugh when everyone mentions it. It's always the response.
From your knowledge, do the Gower brothers ever reach out to the Jagex moderating team and make suggestions?
I'm not sure about suggestions, but I know that they're still in touch. Like, there's a few members of the team that are still in the team now that have contact with the Gowers and are in regular contact with them on a non-professional level. So I'd imagine that there's discussion that goes on, in regards to updates and changes and just general, Jagexy things. But in an official capacity, at least as far as I'm aware, there's no kind of like channel that we have of communication to the Gowers for them to send suggestions or for us to send them suggestions. However, they're very much still involved and still considered, like a huge part of Jagex. I know there's a lot of respect for them from everyone really in Jagex, and you'll always see them attending RuneFest and the events that they're able to, which is really, really cool to see.
One of my viewers sent me this question to ask you. When looking at the overall health of the game, do you see the economy lasting for the next 10 years, or do you think this power creep update will help the economy long term?
Yeah, that's a really good question. With the equipment rebalancing changes that we're looking at as a result of trying to tackle power creep before it becomes a bigger problem than it is at the moment, I don't really think the goal in mind, at least the main goal, was in regards to the economy. It was more around about making sure that items correctly reflected their, intended strength, or it was obvious at how powerful one particular item was when compared to another, and obviously making sure that items that were just considered too strong aren't so strong. And that's really to just make sure that going forward, we're in a much better place to balance new content, whether it's new bosses, new raid encounters, new equipment coming into the game and such, new effects, new mechanics. That's what the intention is with the equipment rebalancing, not so much the economy. So I don't think that it will help the economy, because we're not trying to make it help the economy. It probably will have an impact, and we've already seen, every time that we talk about the equipment rebalance, and if you make a particular change to a certain item, there's always fluctuations in price as people, panic buy and panic sell. And so on and so forth, or a few people may jump on an opportunity to try and merch, but they're always very temporary, and typically you'll see items that will settle again. In terms of the economy, do I think the economy will last? Yes. And the main reason is because it's a player regulated economy. At the end of the day, the players dictate the prices of items. Obviously that is, dependent on supply and demand, but there's the only part of, the economy that we determine from an old school team perspective is the ALC prices of things, right? So as long as the items are being traded higher than ALC value, it's a completely player driven economy as far as I'm concerned. In the future, does that mean that Bandos will still hold the price tag that it does now? Well, probably not. But will there be other items that will replace Bandos that will cause Bandos to go down as a result? Probably. Does that mean that the economy is broken as a result? Probably not. It's just, I think you'd expect to see gear that becomes less and less relevant in the years to come become less and less expensive. We've seen it with Barrows. I wouldn't say that the economy's broken, because you can buy Barrows pieces now for a couple of mil as opposed to 10 plus mil for a full set like it used to be, and that's fine. So yeah, I'm not really concerned with the economy. It is something that we do keep an eye on, and if we ever are in a position where we feel like there are issues, then we'll look to make changes. For example, if I was to, the one that I can think of at the moment is with the introduction of birdhouses and the update to birdhouses on Fossil Island. When they first came out, they were relatively underwhelming in terms of the amount of nests that they provided, and players felt like they weren't really all that useful doing. So there was an update that was made to basically increase the amount of resources that you got from them, give a little bit more of an incentive and a reason to go out of your way and do them, aside from the passive experience, which I think may have also been increased. As a result, the change was too far on the one scale, and it caused the amount of bird nests in the game to skyrocket. And as a result, we saw the price drop, and we saw the price of sourdough and brews also drop, because crushed bird nests being one of their main ingredients. And that is something that we monitored, that we noticed, and we made changes as a result, so that the economy could restabilize. So yeah, where we cause issues, for example, we do look at the economy, so to speak. It's more about looking at the volume of items coming into the game compared to them going out of the game, and if there's a clear discrepancy, that may have been a result of a change that we've done, or maybe not, and it's just something has happened that didn't happen before. We monitor that as much as we can, and we make changes where we can, and that was just an example of that.
Can you talk about your favorite/least favorite thing that you have worked on?
Ooh, now that is a really, really good question, and also a really hard one to answer, because there have been so many things that I've loved working on. Almost everything, even the things that have been difficult. Give me a second, let me think about this one, because there are so many answers that I could give you, honestly. Yeah, so in terms of like content that I've worked on, it's really difficult to say, because without trying to sound like too much of a cop-out, I enjoy working on everything. That I really love my job at Jagex and the kind of like things that I get to work on. But if I had to say, I'll just give a couple. So first of all, Dragon Slayer 2, that project was incredible, and it's a little bit different from any of the others. Not just because the fact it was an absolutely fantastic quest, and such an epic advancement to one of the original, most iconic quests in the game, but it was also like my first project. When I started working on Dragon Slayer 2, I'd been at Jagex for 2 weeks. I'd never worked in community management before, so I had absolutely no idea pretty much of what I was doing, like for real. But I was a player at the time, and I'd seen a lot of blogs that were coming out, and I'd spent so much time in Twitch chat and going through Reddit. So I kind of had an idea of it. I kind of said to myself, and I think Dragon Slayer 2 set me up for how I approached content going forward as a community manager, because I looked at it from the perspective of, okay, if I was still a player right now, what information would I want to make me feel like I fully understand what I'm going to be voting on when it comes to the poll? And I used that approach to pretty much dictate how the blog was going to be. And oh boy, did it turn out to be a big blog. I think it's like, I do think it's like the biggest blog at the time. Like, it was by far the biggest blog at the time, with the most questions. A serious amount in there was offered. Like, I can't even tell you the number of questions that's in there anymore, because we ended up doing like, I think 3 iterations of like blogs, and then a separate blog for extra rewards, and then fine tuning. But that was definitely up there. I also really enjoyed working on the Theatre of Blood. That itself was incredible, being able to put together the next raid after Chambers of Xeric, and it also be completely different in terms of its room generation being static as opposed to randomized. Yeah, so that was, again, that was like the second biggest blog that I ever did. Pretty much between 2017 and 2018, any major content updates that you saw, I would have been the one that put those blogs together. Yeah, but the great thing about Theatre of Blood, when compared to Dragon Slayer 2 is that I was obviously a lot more comfortable. I'd been there for, nearly a year at this point. I knew a lot more about how the team worked and how the process is of like giving information. So I had a lot of opportunities to submit my own design ideas for Theatre of Blood when it came to bosses and mechanics and rewards. And I got involved heavily with those kind of like discussions to help shape it, which was really, really fun and just got me so passionate about the project. And seeing all the art come through to it, I love the design of Theatre of Blood. It's incredible. So yeah, I really, really enjoy that. And then another one that was equally great was like the last major project that I worked on, which was the Kebos Lowlands. I put together the original blog that included the poll, but I never got to finish it. I never got to see it through to the end because I left before it released. It came out January 2019 and I left December 2018. So I managed to get it through the door. I got to see my last kind of like big piece of content past the polls. And again, it was just great being able to just be so heavily involved in that. If I was to say like least favorite, it's not like in the sense of like least favorite because I don't like the content. I'll talk about it from a perspective of like my own personal dealings with that. So the Wilderness Rejuvenation 2, that was back in 2017. I believe we started looking at that in, I think it was around about November. I'm pretty sure it was November anyway. So I hadn't been at Jagex for too long at this point. I'd just seen Dragon Slayer 2 finish in terms of the blogs and such. And then, yeah, we started looking at the Wilderness Rejuvenation 2, which included the Revenant Caves, as well as Mage Arena 2. There's a lot of work that went into putting the rewards and such together for those pieces of content. If anyone was playing at the time, they would know how many attempts we had at getting unique rewards into the Revenant Caves and them all failing in the polls, which left us in a position of having the Revenant Caves ready with no rewards, but having said that it would provide a certain amount of GP per hour. And ultimately seeing that release with the drop tables that they had, whilst, I guess in terms of the amount that you could make as a single player, it made sense. It just felt so awful. I really didn't enjoy seeing that content go into the game the way that it did. And I'd have loved us to have had a little bit more time before it released to, actually look at putting in those unique rewards. So when the Revenant Caves released in with its drop table of alcoballs, the infamous 100 dragon plate legs, for example, I was hell-bent on making sure that I didn't give up. And there was a lot of people in the community that were, I wouldn't say that they were rude about it, but they were making it very well known that they thought that I only cared about PvP and that I was spending way too much effort on content that, is considered, I guess, less of a majority than the rest of the game. And that made it difficult for me because I was remembering that, I always want to try and serve every area of the community equally. And I feel like PvP is one of the ones that does get underrepresented a fair amount in the updates and stuff that we do. It's changing now. Like we're seeing more and more emphasis on PvP changes. Like later on this year, we'll see some changes into the wilderness. We've got Deadman coming back as well. And parts of the equipment rebalance have been, almost entirely focused around PvP balancing. But back then it wasn't as much of the, of the case until Deadman came along, of course, and that kind of like took all the attention. But to have people feel, they basically said that I was the, the PvP JMod and that's all I cared about, which just isn't true. I can understand why people would feel that way, but that's what made it difficult for me in terms of like a less favorable project to work on, because to me that wasn't my intention at all. My intention was to just make sure that like at the end of the day we had a piece of content in game that a lot of players weren't happy with. Some players were because they were making complete bank, of course, but a lot weren't. So I spent a lot of time outside of work hours Not because I had to. I could have, by all means found the time within work hours. I'm not trying to like paint a picture of like being overworked or such. It was more of just like a pure passion for me at this point to look at alternate ideas and suggestions. And it's kind of funny, actually. I ended up making a competition on Reddit where I had a old school snapback, flat peak, whatever the caps are called, and then some other goodies that I'd collected over my time of being at Jagex. That they were my own like personal collection that I had that would be on my desk as nice little mementos. And I basically just put a competition up on Reddit and said, look, I'll give away everything that I have here to whoever's suggestion is good enough that makes it through to the next blog. And we had a load of really good suggestions coming through. And then it was the one that caught my eye about weapons that were effective against wilderness bosses. And I kind of took that concept and ran with it and ended up designing all of the wildy weapons. So I went ahead and I'll hold my hands up if anyone feels like they're broken. I don't really think they are. I think if anything, they're broken in the sense of not good enough, because I was a little bit overcautious, especially when it comes to the Thammaron Scepter. But yeah, the wilderness weapons in terms of their stats and balancing and the way that the ether is required to charge them and it always gets lost was a passion design of mine that I spent a good few weeks putting together to pitch to the team as a new suggestion. And I was really, really happy about that. So it's like Revenant Caves was like a good and bad one for me because, I had all the issues with it, but then I had the positives where the team saw that this had potential and we got agreement that we could look to basically, poll these rewards coming into the game as well as changing some of their broken drop table. And that ended up being, obviously a pretty successful change at least. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done at Revenant Caves, and I think we're going to be having a look back at them again when it comes to the wilderness changes later this year. But a lot of that was in the time since I've been gone, so it'll be nice to go back there and really just give it that last touch so that it is in a good place again. And I know I've realized I've spent so long answering this question, but it's literally because there are so many things I can say that I've enjoyed and loved working on. It would be wrong of me to not mention Deadman Mode. Having the opportunity to be able to cast those events. Never shoutcasting anything before, and I suddenly have the opportunity to be, on the virtual television in front of over 100,000 people was completely surreal. And then that kind of carried on to casting as an employee, and then leaving Jagex and still getting to cast as a non-employee. That opened up so many opportunities for me. I met so many incredible people as a result, and Deadman as a general game mode will always hold a place in my heart as a result. I remember spending so much time on the first Deadman release because I just enjoyed it so much, and knowing how much it changed kind of like people's perception on how old school could be played, I think has been fantastic and so healthy for the game. Aside from like membership, with Deadman basically made leagues possible, because without having Deadman as the original kind of like concept and people getting to try it out, it may have been a case that leagues never ended up being as successful as it did on the first iteration. We learned a lot from Deadman that made the Trailblazer League, for example, possible. And then the Twisted League. And then from Twisted League to Trailblazer, you can see the massive jump up in kind of like production and quality and development time and all the intricacies around it. So yeah, Deadman definitely is way up there. That's my like non-worked on as a community manager in a polling perspective, but got to by being a Jagex perspective.
I just want to take this opportunity to speak for the community in saying that we appreciate your hard work. I know at times it doesn't seem like it, but we do truly appreciate it. I would also like to give you this time to speak on any final words.
I appreciate that. And, it's like, it's not all doom and gloom. I know at times, I think I've mentioned in the past, there's been people get a little bit emotional and maybe say things that they probably shouldn't say to another human. But there are so many more positive comments that come through, and especially recently, to just touch on that. And I guess it's kind of relevant to the question you asked me just before about, least favorite, but working on the equipment rebalancing has been hard. it has been really difficult. It's a very contentious kind of thing. Want change, but sometimes change is good. And being in the really difficult position of a community manager and having to be that voice of both the players and the development team and bridging that gap is it's been interesting. It's been difficult. I feel like it'll be worth it in the long run. But people have said some things they probably didn't need to say, but other people have also, expressed their gratitude and thanks. And at the end of the day, that's what makes it all worthwhile. If someone, I don't want to come across like in a wrong way here. So hopefully people will listen to this and take it as a positive. But if you're ever in a situation where someone is going way out of their way to be overly negative in a non-constructive way towards you, then it's probably likely that they're having to deal with a lot worse issues than you are, and just remember that you're in a probably in the better place for it. So don't let the negativity drag you down. At least that's what I try not to do. For every 10 negative comments, if there's one positive, it just outweighs it entirely. And those are the kind of people that we want to make the changes for. The people that are supportive, that are constructive. Because at the end of the day, as a player, you pay to play this game. You have a right to be unhappy and to complain and to say that you don't want something to happen. That's absolutely fine, and I welcome it. It helps me do my job tenfold. Without people saying that they're not happy, I just have to keep going back and saying, yeah, it's fine. And it's not always fine. We don't always get things right. That's why we try and make sure that we talk to you as the players about all the changes that we do. And even when they're not polled, like the equipment rebalancing, for example, we're now on the 5th, I believe, iteration of blogs. And there's a new one due to be coming out in 2 days' time. So, yeah, I know a lot of people feel like their feedback around equipment rebalancing has been ignored. It's not the case. I know it appears that way, but it's definitely not. I personally read every single comment that gets sent, and there's been a lot of comments for the equipment rebalance. It's just, again, going back to it's a difficult situation where, we know that change is necessary for the health of the game. And a lot of the feedback is don't make the change at all. If we continue with making a change, then it does definitely seem like feedback is being ignored, because if the majority of feedback is to not do it and we do it, I don't really think we can dispute that. So a lot of my time has been going into sifting through the don't do it's, which still obviously, get sent over and are taken into account. But it's like sifting through and it's like, all right, we know that something has to happen. Is there a middle ground that we can achieve that will make the don't do it's happier about the change? Not happy, but happier to the point where they can accept it and feel like, they understand why, and that, okay, I can agree on that for those reasons. And that's a lot of what's been happening. It's like the Dragonhide, Din's Bulwark, Blowpipe, they've all been changed in, one way or another since the very first equipment rebalancing proposal went out. I can be honest with you, when we originally were talking about internally, a lot of the changes that we're going to make are far more drastic than what was originally pitched, especially when it comes to the Blowpipe. But ultimately, knowing that so many people use it and it's become so established as part of the general meta, we knew that we had to come to a middle ground, really, and get some level of agreement. I think we're there with the Blowpipe now. It's obviously a lot different. I say a lot different. It's not actually that different. And I realize I'm kind of like going off track here, but just because it's something that I've been working on, it's obviously so fresh in my mind right now. What's been really difficult in regards to the equipment rebalance and the changes, though, is that there's it's really easy to get caught up in the snowball effect, is what I like to call it. Not to say that it's unwarranted, but for example, when a meme catches on, I'll use Reddit as an example because it's really easy to see, things that are very popular in terms of upvotes. They're right there at the top of the page. When you get the memes that come forward and they get popularity, and you know what, they are funny. I look at the memes and I laugh at them myself, even if I don't agree with them necessarily. Like, That's one thing that the community has always been great for, is creating memes. But what it's not great for is when memes then start to become the kind of like reference that people go back to for information, as opposed to the information that, you know, we might try and give out to players. Not to say that we always do a great job at that, and we'll be giving more info in terms of numbers, but you know, a lot of the conversation when we've made a change to a blog doesn't necessarily take into account the changes that we've made, and it still kind of holds on to a lot of what is now, you know, dated information, because the memes are still popular. So you know, people might not have seen the changes, read the updates, noticed the difference. So that makes things difficult when it comes to trying to find the genuine feedback, and at the same time, it also makes it very difficult to try and inform people about the differences too. But I think we're getting there, and we always knew it was going to be a very difficult kind of topic to approach. That's why it's taken so long. But I do think it's a good one for the health of the game, and I think that honestly, once it's done, I don't think people will notice as much of a difference as they think they will. Especially if we're able to make sure that any areas that are, you know, severely impacted, which at the moment there's a few that we've highlighted that we'll touch on. There's a few, you know, NPCs that we feel that even, you know, with the blowpipe changes, it doesn't really introduce a huge amount of variety to bridge the gap. And the blowpipe still becomes like the only item that you use, but it's now, you know, 20 or 15 or so % worse. You know, if we're able to look at those, you know, very particular isolated creatures and make changes to adjust accordingly, then I think, yeah, for the most part, it's going to be one of those that no one will really notice, and we'll just carry on as normal. And you know, in a few months' time, we'll see new things coming into the game, and we'll see exciting changes, and we'll have a lot more variety to explore when it comes to rewards and such. So
I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, leave a comment down for Mod Ayiza. He will be answering questions. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, make sure to leave a fire emoji in the comments. That's how I know who's loyal. Anyways, my name is Snack Food, and I'll see you later. Peace.